So we know MediaTek is producing some really good CPUs right now. We've reviewed and monitored their CPU making and reviewed the flagship CPUs that they're coming out with. They have a new 9300 series CPU. I think that one is in the Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 Plus and S10 Ultra. And then we have the new MediaTek Dimensity 9400 that is being set to release here. I guess here shortly. I'm not sure of the official release date, but I'm assuming it's at any moment. Now, we got some interesting news. We do know Samsung has made some changes. These two stories and topics merged because Samsung, it appears, is we first got the news with the new S25 series. So S25, S25 Plus, S25 Ultra is going to go. Now, here's the catch, and it makes sense because we got news that they were not going to release a Exynos variant of the upcoming S25 series. In the past, they've kind of, Samsung's toyed around, played around with some of their devices, depending on what part of the world you're in, would have an Exynos CPU like the S24 series, and then some of the models, depending on where you lived and where you purchased your phone, would have a Qualcomm Snapdragon variant, which here in the US released the Qualcomm variant. Samsung's had major issues with their Exynos CPUs. They've had it's been documented, and we've gone over the issues. I won't beat a dead horse with explaining what their issues have been. But we did get some new news that kind of ties into the old news. So apparently Samsung is going to use, Samsung is going to use the new Dimensity, MediaTek Dimensity 9400 in the S25 series, the base model. Now, they're still going to use Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 for the Plus and Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 for the Ultra. Now, this all makes sense today when we got this news because I was like, wait a second, I pieced everything together. So the first story is true, that, and it would still fit in, kind of piecing all these stories together. So the first story that came out that I mentioned, that they would not include the Exynos model in this S25 series. Okay, that's still a true statement and can be a true statement and can come to fruition, but never mentioned anything about Dimensity. And last week we did a story on the new Dimensity 9400 is actually cheaper to produce than the Exynos flagship, very best Exynos CPU, and is cheaper to produce. I mean, I'm talking about a per chip basis than the than the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 4. We broke down the price of these new CPUs because the new 8 Gen 4 is going to be about 20% more expensive than the 8 Gen 3. Which means you could see higher prices in the new S25 Plus and S25 Ultra. However, we did mention, and again, this does fit into our story, that the new MediaTek Dimensity 9400 is actually the cheapest out of all the flagship CPUs to produce, meaning on a per chip basis. The cost of a new Dimensity MediaTek 9400 is the same cost and or 20% cheaper than the new flagship Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 4. The cost of a new MediaTek Dimensity 9400 is the same cost as an 8 Gen 3. So it would make sense, this news story, if you bring in everything that I just described. Every story is true, and it's like fitting a puzzle together. All these stories, actually, if you form them together, make sense. And would garner truth to this rumor that has come out today that Samsung is going to use the new MediaTek Dimensity 9400 in the base model S25. Because one thing, Samsung can save money. And as you know, because remember, it costs to produce on per chip basis the same amount as a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. So if Samsung put the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 4, which is 20% more than the 8 Gen 3, in the S25, the base S25, it's going to cut into their profits. The S25, the base model, is the cheapest, right? I think they start out at $799, I believe. So if you want to keep the prices the same as Samsung for the consumer, if you want to keep it at $899, but your costs, at least for the CPU, is 20% more. That's good. That's, what did we say that was? About, I think the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 we heard is going to be like $180. So you're roughly looking at, what's 20% of 180? Sorry, I can't do it off the top of my head. I should be able to. 180 times 0.2. So it's $36. Doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, they're selling millions of phones. So even if you sell 1 million, that saves Samsung $36 million. If you sell 2 million, that saves them $72 million. So you can see if they sell 3 million, it saves them almost 100 million. So you can see how every little penny, every dollar that goes into these phones, manufacturing these phones, cuts into their profits. So if they're still trying to sell the S25 for $799, but their CPU costs them 20% more to put a Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 in the base model, well, Samsung's sitting there saying, well, wait a second, we can put the MediaTek Dimensity 9400 CPU, which is a beast. In fact, it beats the Apple A18, the new iPhone 16 series CPU. It beats them in some benchmarks. So they're not putting some mid-range CPU in this S25, in this base S25. It's going to be a freaking beast of a CPU. And Samsung can save roughly $36 per device. That again, you sell millions of these, it saves them hundreds of millions of dollars. Going with MediaTek, going with the new Dimensity 9400 in the base S25, so it doesn't cut into their profits. Because if they kept the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 4, they would basically, I'm assuming, raise the cost to the consumer, right? And that's not really a good thing, especially when you're trying to sell as many phones as possible. Raising the price every single year is not a good thing, and they've done that, I believe, at least 2 out of the last 3 years. So at some point, Samsung as a company has to sit down and say, well, wait a second, we need to save a little bit of money here, and this makes total sense. So let me pull up this new article, this new leak that I'm talking about, right? So check this out. And it's interesting because Google might have accidentally leaked their own. Here we go. Samsung might have actually accidentally leaked this information. There we go. A little bit bigger. There we go. So there's a new article here. Google may have inadvertently revealed the use of MediaTek's Dimensity 9400 in the Samsung upcoming S25 series. Now, I'm not going to say it's a clickbait, but S25 series meaning the base model. So they're not going to replace Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 across the board in these S25s. The S25 Plus and S25 Ultra will still have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 4. It's just the base model, the 6.3 inch S25 series, is going to have this new MediaTek Dimensity 9400. I love it. I've used 1, 2, 3 devices with a MediaTek CPU, and I think they're great. I didn't have any issues with them whatsoever. A OnePlus device, and then 2 nothing phones with MediaTek CPUs. So rumor has been floating around for a while that Samsung will employ MediaTek's upcoming Dimensity 9400 in one of its Galaxy S25 models, and this should be worldwide, so not just region specific. It should be worldwide. We'll get the MediaTek Dimensity 9400 in the S25, and then worldwide, the 8 Gen 4 Snapdragon will be in the S25 Plus and S25 Ultra. Neither Samsung nor MediaTek have confirmed this because probably trying to keep it under wraps, but Google might have accidentally spilled the beans on the partnership between Samsung and MediaTek. Let's see. For those who do not know, Google's Alpha chip is the advertising giant's DeepMind AI division. Alpha chip is what Google calls their AI division inside the company, which leverages artificial intelligence to design processors. Yes, to design processors. In a recent blog post that highlighted the strides made by this sector, the company revealed Samsung and MediaTek's possible alliance in the paragraph below. Here we go. Here's an excerpt from it. Well, let me read what they describe. So here's what might have revealed this revelation here that we got today. Alpha chip's impact can be seen in its applications across Alphabet and research community and the chip design industry. Beyond designing specialized AI accelerators like TPUs, and Alpha chip has generated layouts for other chips across Alphabet, such as Google Axion processors are first ARM-based general-purpose data center CPUs. External organizations are also adopting and building on Alpha chip. For example, MediaTek, hint hint, one of the top chip design companies in the world, extended Alpha chip to accelerate development of their most advanced chips like the Dimensity flagship 5G used in Samsung mobile phones, while improving power, performance, and chip area. You might have noticed there's no specific mention of the Dimensity 9400 and the S25 series, but it does mention Dimensity flagship 5G, which is either the Dimensity 9300 or 9300 Plus, or the one that's set to be released here shortly, which is their new 9400. But that cannot be true because none of Samsung S24 models were equipped with any MediaTek chipsets. Right? They're only going to put a flagship chipset in a flagship phone. It doesn't make sense to put a flagship CPU in a Samsung Galaxy A55. Then it wouldn't be a mid-range phone, correct? They don't put flagship CPUs in mid-range phones. So if the quote here is saying Dimensity flagship 5G CPUs in Samsung mobile phones, remember they did not say tablets, because Samsung is using the 9300 Dimensity in their new Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 and S10 Plus, S10 Ultra. The Dimensity 9400 is expected to go official tomorrow, and so it is possible that one of these companies will reveal the existing partnership between the two companies. Guys, and girls, it makes sense, literally and figuratively, for Samsung to do this. They're not going to give up their partnership with Qualcomm, although I think they really could. I still believe, is there a possibility that Samsung could go with MediaTek Dimensity 9400 CPU all across the board in S25 series devices? It sure is. What's the percentage of that happening? Probably small, but I still think it's a very small possibility. I still expect them to put 8 Gen 4 Snapdragons in the Plus and the Ultra variants, but I would not be surprised. Remember, cost. Everything in this world comes down to money. Decisions, business decisions, comes down to money. I don't care what it is, it comes down to money. Samsung's struggling right now. Their chip department is costing them millions, if not billions of dollars. They're looking to revamp that. But we all know they don't really put Exynos CPUs. There would be a huge outcry if Samsung put their own Exynos CPUs in the S25 series or in any of their phones. Now, I know they did it, but it's a rarity, right? They're so hit and miss with their CPUs. They can't afford to have a miss and produce a shitty CPU and put it inside their flagship phones. The Dimensity 9400, I'm going to stress again, is 20% cheaper than the 8 Gen 4. It roughly costs the same price to manufacture. The Dimensity 9400 is the same price it cost Qualcomm to manufacture the 8 Gen 3. So Samsung could save hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, putting this new Dimensity 9400 in the S25 series across the board. Would save them hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, when you factor in how many millions of cell phones they sell. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this. I think this is a huge story. I'm delighted to see it. Again, this is not a bummer by any means. Whichever direction they plan to go, whether it's just in the base S25 or if they want to put this new 9400 in all the S25 models, this is not a bad decision. Again, it's a beast of a CPU that rivals the 8 Gen 4 in the Apple A18 Bionic, or the Bionic A18 Pro that's in the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. It's right up there in performance, battery life, everything. So I would be delighted if that came to fruition. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this. I know this is a hot topic, so please stay tuned to the channel, and I can promise you, as soon as we get any other news, I will bring it forward. Now, on tomorrow's podcast, I'm definitely going to cover the new Dimensity 9400. They're expected to officially release it tomorrow. So they'll have like a keynote. Look, this is their flagship product, MediaTek. So they're gonna promote it, and we'll cover it. We'll go over all the numbers, show you how powerful it is. All the numbers, trust me, they're gonna have a big unveiling for this, so we'll definitely cover this tomorrow. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe. I'm streaming across a bunch of different platforms. Come to eSIM Studios on YouTube. So go to YouTube, type in eSIM Studios. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you get nothing but the latest and greatest news and reviews when it comes to technology.